After many hours of flying, layovers, and sitting around in airports, we finally made it to our destination in Guatemala, which was Guatemala City, about 3 hours away from San Lucas, where we would be staying for the next week. Our first image of Guatemala was when we left the front doors of the airport, and there was just this wall of people standing there waiting for loved ones, whether they were deported from America or other countries or coming home from military duty. It was an astounding first impression, to say the least.
Going from Guatemala City to where it actually was, you saw the entire country is not really rich, but you saw Guatemala City was richer than the place we were going. So you could just see as we're driving the environmental changes and the building structural changes, how they depreciated as the further you went out of the city. And then we finally arrived at the hotel. I don't remember what time it was, but I know it was a really long day for all of us.
So when we eventually arrived to our hotel, it was definitely not what we expected it to be. It was fronts of all these little shops, and there was an internet cafe, an Italian restaurant, but we realized really what it was once we went through the gates, and we went up this cobblestone path under this threshold, and as we got to the back of the hotel, it just opened up, and we were staring at this big mountain, and we realized that we were staying at this beautiful hotel.
It was actually nicer than what I thought, especially the church. The way that they described it, I just thought it would have been a little more rundown, but because I guess the church was such an influential part in the whole thing, because it made sense that they kind of kept it well organized and everything. How the community itself, it didn't appear to be really nice, but the people themselves were, which was different than what you see around here, because you see nice buildings, but the way that community-wise people interact with each other is just not really there.
We went to this Plaza of Peace, Place of Peace, and what we learned there was that after there was a massacre of about 18 to 20 citizens of this town, the people said, "No more." And they came together as a community and confronted the military and said, "This has to stop. You must get out of our city. We are reclaiming our land. We are reclaiming our town." And the military had never seen anything like that. They actually left the city, and to this day, military are never garrisoned in Santiago Atitlan.
Yeah, so the church in Santiago is where Father Stan Rother was murdered. I think that was really touching just because, one, it had a connection with the Church of San Lucas, and two, because it really demonstrated the power of one person standing up for a mass of people. It was also just touching because, his blood was still on the floor. There was a lot in the Church of Santiago that really spoke to the history that we had learned about through the Civil War, and to me that was really eye-opening.
And then we got to experience what a Guatemalan market is like, and literally walking through, you're stepping on other people's stuff that they're selling. This was here, this is there. It was so hectic compared to you would never see something like that in America. And it's just crazy to see how many people are trying to make a living selling fish, fruits that have flies all over them.
The market was definitely a sensory overload for a lot of people, me included, and it was a good snapshot of what Guatemalan daily life is actually like.
I think the unfortunate thing about the hospital in San Lucas is that they can't really perform a lot of things on their own. They rely on a lot of American volunteers, doctors or med students to come down and perform surgeries and things, which is awesome that people come down and do those in waves. But the fact that if I need a surgery, I can't get it until July when the American students are coming down is really unfortunate. But it's so cool that they have a self-sustaining and really practical medical facility for short-term care, long-term care. So yeah, definitely a high-end facility relative to what the rest of the country had. It would just be awesome if we could get Guatemalan doctors to really be at a level of proficiency that they can help their own people on a more consistent basis.
So we had an opportunity to see their coffee plantation and all the work that goes into it. And before this trip, as a huge coffee drinker, I never ever thought about how much work goes into that little cup of coffee in the morning, but it's hours year round that go into just one little cup of coffee, from growing the beans to raking and drying them to roasting them to grinding them to sending them all the way up to us. And it was really eye-opening to see how much work goes into that little cup of coffee. We also had the opportunity where they made the coffee right there for us, and it's probably the freshest coffee we would have ever tasted, literally roasted and grinded right before our eyes. And it was just an amazing opportunity to see what goes into something that is part of my daily life that I don't even think about.
After our tours of the coffee plantation and getting a chance to try it ourselves, it was our time to start working.
We were split up into different groups, and my group was Dr. Zurich, Dr. Green, Sister Christine Marie, and myself, and the four of us did fertilizing. So we fertilized all the little coffee plants, and Sister beat all of us. She was ahead of everyone.
Other than the people fertilizing, there was two more groups. One was weeding, and the other was clearing a bed on the other side of the farm. After we were done working, we went back to the mission and met someone truly amazing.
What is remarkable about this course and this immersion experience is that it provides the students with the opportunity to meet some remarkable people and also establish relationships with special people like Chona, who lived at the mission for 50 years and worked closely with Father Greg Schaefer for half a century. Meeting Chona and being able to listen to her own testimony of the years of violence during the Civil War is a treasure for us.
Going to Nueva Providencia for the first time and seeing the bridge was really uncomfortable.
I think crossing that bridge was my least favorite thing that we did the whole week, because I don't like heights. But I said, I'm going to do this. And so I held on to the cables on each side as I made my way across. But of course I had to look down because there were some holes that you had to be careful you didn't put your foot in. But I didn't look down any farther than that to the ravine that was below. So that made it not too thrilling. After that, we climbed a steep cliff, a steep path, rocky path, but I felt secure because I had Chris behind me telling me he had my back, and that was really comforting.
So the people that were working on the houses were contracted to work on the houses, and they really showed us everything that we needed to do, and they went step by step, which probably took longer than them doing it themselves.
So working on the houses, we were helping build cinder block homes for two families that were living in, I'd say, wooden huts and maybe metal rooftops with dirt floors. And at first they had us trying to clean off some of the boards they were going to use, and then they told us to make cement.
So my job was to mix the cement together, and I messed up. So they had to go back and fix all of our work that we did, which took even longer, but they were still very thankful that we were able to help them.
Never have I ever felt so, I guess, useless. And it took two of us to try and make a little bit of cement, and then one guy came in and he was able to make an entire huge pile of it in half the time that me and one of the girls were trying to do it. And it's just amazing to see I feel we always come in and we say oh, we know how to do things the right way, and I'm going to show you how to fix this, but really they're not dumb people. They know how to do things probably better than we do.
So the cemetery there must have been hundreds of people buried there, and most of the graves were kind of worn down, or very colorful, but flowers strewn all over the place, and then there was some dogs walking around, so it wasn't a super well kept cemetery. And then you hit Father Greg's tomb right in the middle, and it was just immaculate. And it was clear that even though Father Greg isn't physically with the people anymore, that people still come and care for him. And it's clear that, the sad thing, they gave that quote about there being two cemeteries in the town, the one in the town and the lake. Father Greg's tomb being so immaculate in the heart of the more respectful one is so symbolic of his aid in transitioning away from these travesties that were ending in bodies and people going missing in the lake to people living lives of respect and ultimately ending up in a more formidable place like the one Father Greg's in.
So the one day when we went to Chi-Chi, we got to visit a giant elementary school, and the first thing that was going on when we got there was all the kids were out at recess, so it's kind of funny to see that even though 5 hours away in a different country, away from our own, and the kids really aren't any different than we were, and it was fun to be able to get out there and play with the kids, even though I didn't understand a single word they were saying, but it's nice to see that no matter where you go in the world, everyone seems to be the same.
Me and a group of other students did a little game of basketball with some of the kids there, and that was so much fun. We got to visit a classroom. It was actually an all-girl classroom, and it was just so much fun interacting with them and seeing what their school is like, how they live day in and day out.
We met a lot of cool people at the school, but it wasn't until a couple hours later, back in San Lucas, that we met someone really awesome.
So everyone grew a huge attachment to Sammy. He was the cutest, and he followed us all the way to the hotel, and we all just had this affection for him because he was so sweet and so little, and his puppy eyes just looked at you, and you just kind of fell in love with him, and he was part of the crew.
It was really sad that once we decided to pet him and feed him or her. Once we let Sammy come in the ice cream shop and we gave her a biscuit, it was really sad that she followed us because she realized that we were her source of food.
He followed us right back to the hotel, and he obviously couldn't come into the hotel with us, and everyone was freaking out that he was gonna be out there all alone at night, and it was really sad, and it just kind of hit home to all of us, I think, because if that was our dog, we would probably be crying.
We had the opportunity to paint at a school at the Mission, and they had us paint almost like a shed on top of the building. But it was really fun though. We ended up painting Cabrini over it first, and then we painted over it, and we met a dog named Lobel, and he was really cute, and we got to touch him, so it was nice.
So Lobel was the guard dog at the school, and they say that he's pretty nice during the day because he guards the school and he's kind of just part of the school, but at night he knows he's a guard dog, so he may bark if you come up to him because he knows he's protecting the area. The people at the school take care of him, so they feed him, and he's taken care of with all the necessary shots.
So at the Women's Center, we learned about the customs, about carrying the load on your head, about washing the clothes on the ladder, and also carrying the wood sticks on your back. And then as far as carrying the sticks on your back, I've never seen that before, and it's really, really heavy. The sticks that we carried wasn't as heavy as the ones that the men carry each day, and even kids younger than I am carry those heavy sticks every day.
I was trying to wash a shirt, and the one lady did it in 5 minutes, and I was sitting there and I was scrubbing the shirt, and I was trying to make it smell like they have it, and God bless washing machines, more or less, but it's not easy, and it's amazing that the one woman there was doing it with a kid on her back and a kid at her side. I just feel kind of blessed that we have what we have.
I think the entire group's favorite part of the week was the downtime that we got with the kids at the Women's Center after we were done working with them. They were so infatuated with playing with us and using our phones. I think what it boiled down to is that a lot of us connected with them because they reminded of kids just back here.
Really liked having us there and playing with them because that's not something that they get to do with their families because their parents, their moms were obviously busy working.
I'll always remember the little children that I met. They're the same as my baby cousins here, and they just weren't given the same opportunities.
last day we went to, like, it was almost like a little town, I guess, or a village, and we couldn't make the actual stoves, but they had us carry the supplies for the stoves down to these people's houses.
First thing we had to do was climb down like a 45-degree angle hill, then cross a bridge, and then go down a bunch of other hills to get to these homes. And it's crazy. Like, I was carrying 2 cinder blocks, and then there was a woman carrying 2 cinder blocks on her head. Like, we even had a little kid helping us. Like,
each of us carried either 1 or 3 cinder blocks, and even the little children were carrying cinder blocks on their heads. When we would get down to the houses, we would have time to like meet with the families, and you could really see like what they live in, and it was just dirt, and it was just really rough. And you could just see the dirt on the children. Sometimes you could see what the children were putting in their mouths, and it was sad. And there was a house we went down into that was like really like all the way down, like it was like going into a cave almost. You could tell it was really hard to breathe down there, and it's just really hard to see like these people living in such terrible things.
So the people of Guatemala are so strong, even the kids. When we were getting ready to leave, the kids came up and they were just packing up like the little blocks and carrying it back and forth, and which was like even heavy for like some of the guys that came with us.
So the unusual aspect of our trip, as distinguished from other colleges, is that not only do we learn about Guatemala before we go, but when we return, typical thing that students say when they go on these trips is, "I've been transformed. I will never be the same again." And then like 2 weeks later, everything goes back to normal, with kind of a remembrance of the trip and of what they saw. The different thing here is we try to figure out what we as Americans, as United States citizens, can uniquely do. And what we can uniquely do is speak to our government and make sure that our government properly funds development projects that help people in Guatemala rise out of poverty so that they don't feel compelled to immigrate, so that they can have happy and fulfilled lives where they were born.
We went there not only to serve, but to be immersed in the culture, to become familiar with the ways of the people, with the lives that they live, and I think we were all very deeply impressed. I came away feeling that our hearts were educated, and now I think the challenge that lies before all of us is to see that we continue to be involved in matters of social justice, so that hopefully the week that we spent in Guatemala will have been a week well spent.
Something that many of us realized right off the bat was the vast difference between Americans' view on dogs and the Guatemalans' view.
So there's dogs everywhere, all over, and you notice that the locals don't even look at them twice. They kind of just walk with them, and they're walking in and out of the homes, and they don't really look at them. They're not really feeding them or anything. The dogs are kind of on their own, and they're going in the garbages themselves to find food for themselves.
Like, for them, they're wild animals, and for us, they're our pets.
Dogs are something that I didn't anticipate when I went down there. I mean, I guess someone probably mentioned it to me along the way, but they're everywhere. They're in alleyways, they're on building tops, they're in buildings, they're running through stores. The dogs are waiting outside the mission for scraps of food if you're willing to give them some. So the dogs are everywhere, all different breeds, all different sizes, and there's no way that dogs don't get hit by cars there every day. Or they're being kicked out of the way by people, just disrespected in general. But I mean, that's the way they live with their dogs. That's the way it is.
As Americans, we think that we know how dogs should be treated, but do we even realize how to treat those of our own species? Think for a moment that these unwanted dogs in Guatemala were people. They were the same immigrants, children, and refugees that come to our borders every day. In the United States, we treat people that directly come from places like Guatemala as if they are dogs. So how can we save these people from crossing our borders? How can we save the dogs? As Americans, we think that we know how dogs should be treated, but do we even realize how to treat those of our own species? Think for a moment that these unwanted dogs in Guatemala were people. They were the same immigrants, children, and refugees that come to our borders every day. In the United States, we treat people that directly come from places like Guatemala as if they are dogs or if they're invisible. So how can we save these people from crossing our borders? How can we save the dogs?